Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Lesson 3 of Unit 11, World War II. Our essential question is, what were the ramifications of World War II on South Carolina and the United States as a whole? So, 1939, Germany invades Poland, the official start to the war. September 3rd, Britain and France declare war on Germany. December 7th, 1941, the day that will live in infamy. Japan bombs Pearl Harbor, U.S. enters the war. 1945, Germany surrenders. 1945, September, atomic bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan surrenders. So, who fought? Well, we got Great Britain, Russia, United States, France as the Allied powers. Now, note that France surrendered to Germany in 1940 after a mere 6 weeks of fighting. The Axis powers: Germany, Italy, Japan. Why did we go to war? So, main reason: Germany lost the lands that it had during World War I. War reparations, so they're having to repay for what they did during World War I. The Allies collected money to pay back the war debt to the U.S. Germany had to pay $57 trillion. That's the modern equivalent to the world for World War I. It bankrupted the German economy and embarrassed the Germans as a whole. Other reasons: Depression made Germany's debt even worse. The desperate people turned to desperate leaders, and of course, that desperate leader was Hitler. Hitler would be the leader, essentially, in the reasonings for World War II, and he used the Jews, communists, gypsies, the mentally ill, as well as other people as the scapegoats for the reasons for the problems in the world. Vandalism and destruction of Jewish property in synagogues, as we saw there. Why did we enter the war? Well, we entered the war. It's a day which will live in infamy because of Pearl Harbor. The surprise attacks by the Japanese on American forces at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. The U.S. would then declare war on Japan and the other Axis powers. The Doolittle Raiders and Tuskegee Airmen, what was their true contribution to the war effort, and how were they connected to South Carolina? Well, the 99th Squadron, which was the Tuskegee Airmen, and then Doolittle Raiders. Doolittle Raiders. So, the bomber pilots, their leader was James Doolittle. They trained in Columbia, South Carolina, and they engaged in risky air attacks launched from aircraft carriers on Tokyo. Did not have enough fuel to return to the aircraft. The attack was successful and lifted the morale of Americans. As we can see here, the Doolittle bombers themselves taking off, risky mission over. The expansion of military bases, direct effect right here on South Carolina. Camps created during World War I were expanded and served to train thousands of young men and were drafted into the armed forces. Camp Jackson in Columbia became Fort Jackson. Charleston Naval Yards produced destroyers like the USS Laffey. The picture of training at Fort Jackson. The USS Laffey, a World War II destroyer. James F. Burns. Remember, he played an essential role during the New Deal programs, but he also became the director of war mobilization during World War II. Economic impact on South Carolina. Economic growth. Once again, just like World War I, we're going to see a positive side to the war, and that's going to see the economy dig itself out from the Great Depression. Many South Carolinians joined the armed forces, including white and African American men and women. The local economy was further stimulated by the expansion of military bases, Fort Jackson, Parris Island, Naval Base in Charleston. Segregation would still exist amongst the military troops. President Roosevelt issued an executive order that offered some jobs in wartime industries to African Americans. A lot of African Americans would continue to move out of South Carolina for better economic and social opportunities in the North and in the West. The Tuskegee Airmen, they were African American pilots who trained at the Tuskegee Institute in Alabama. They're commanded by white officers at first, were so successful that they began escorting heavy bombers on raids. They never lost a plane or a pilot during these raids. Proved that African Americans were as good, if not better, than white combat fighters. Earned the Distinguished Flying Cross, which is the highest medal earned by pilots. The record of these pilots and their attitudes toward their country helped open the doors for other African Americans to serve in the integrated military units in the post-war era. Picture the Tuskegee Airmen. Impact of the war on South Carolina. While many South Carolinians joined the armed forces and served our country, many were illiterate or too poor of physical health to actually fight. This would actually serve as an indicator to the poverty or the poorness of our state. The war brought prosperity with jobs at home and in the service. Farms brought larger than average crops during this time period. South Carolinians contributed to the home front effort by collecting scrap metal and rubber for the production of airplanes, ships, and tanks. They used ration books, so the military would actually have more goods for their military boys. And they bought war bonds to help fund the actual war effort itself. World War II ends, 1945, a celebration as we see here. Prosperity. When the war actually ended, America experienced a new level of prosperity. Once again, they used their savings to buy automobiles and other consumer goods that were not available during the war. America was fully recovered from the Great Depression after the end of World War II. Now, what I want you to do is go back and re-listen and re-watch the slides. Actually, read them to yourselves and work with your study guide as well as your notes to further understand the information.